Indictment of Donald Trump stopped short of charging him with actually encouraging or inciting the mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th, chasing members of Congress from their duties. Congressman Jake Auchincloss had only been in Congress for 3 days when protesters stormed the Capitol, and the congressman, who represents the Commonwealth's 4th District, stretching from Fall River to Newton and Brookline, is here to talk about these latest charges. Thank you so much for joining us here at Issue. Really appreciate it. Let's start with those charges. This is a step to accountability. Do you think more charges should have been filed here directly related to storming the Capitol?
These charges are already the most serious indictment in American history. And over the next 12 months, we need to focus on the substance, not the spectacle. The American people are going to be treated to a theater of the absurd and the grotesque from Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. And I would implore them to read the actual indictment itself, because the weight of the evidence and the testimony sums up that the individual who was sworn to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States instead launched an assault on it.
So you were there January 6th. I always feel like I should do a warning to our Congress members who join us when we show this video, because it's disturbing for me to watch. I imagine it must be disturbing for you. On that period of time, some of your fellow lawmakers, like Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he called out Trump. It was a big moment. He went out and called out Trump, and now he's forcefully defending Trump, and he's calling for investigations of Hunter Biden. What's your reaction to what happened on that day and the camaraderie that some of you felt, and now where we are today?
Speaker McCarthy is simply the most high-profile avatar of the cowardice of too many Republican elected officials. In their personal capacity, they are embarrassed and ashamed of what Donald Trump has meant for the GOP and for the American people. But in their political capacity, they're afraid of their own primary voters, and so they're silent. And while that may save their skin at the ballot box next election cycle, they are going to be judged for it in the pages of history. Their defense of Donald Trump, their deflection on behalf of Donald Trump, their diminishment of what he did, it's all complicity, and they should be held accountable for it.
This is history, not the kind that you want to see happen, especially in the nation's capital. Given the historic moment of a former president on trial, is this now the time for the media to be able to have cameras inside of a federal courthouse? I know dozens of your colleagues have signed on to a letter requesting that this trial be televised. Have you signed that letter yourself? Will you sign that letter? And do you think this should be shown on television?
It's worthy of consideration, but again, my focus is on the substance, not the spectacle of this trial. The indictment is made public. Further testimony and evidence will be made public. And I encourage the American people to read and decide for themselves, because the evidence and the testimony is overwhelming. This is an individual who, over the last 50 years, has conspired to defraud almost every counterparty he's ever come across. And his final act has been to conspire to defraud the American people themselves of their right to the peaceful transfer of power. For the first time since the Civil War, he tried to stop the American government from turning over in our greatest democratic tradition.
But we do know reading court transcripts doesn't have the same effect of seeing somebody being questioned on the stand. It can have a real impact. It can lead more people to pay attention if it's on their television screens. Do you think that has a merit to getting, I realize you don't want the spectacle to become the main focus, but to be able to see the substance live on television instead of reading it in a court transcript?
I'm certainly receptive to anything that helps make manifest to the American people the gravity of these crimes that he committed, and helps them in their capacity as voters indeed be jurors for Donald Trump, because ultimately that is what every American may be called to do in November of 24.
Well, Corey and I were in Washington this past week covering the indictment. A number of tourists were there from not only around the nation, but around the world on their little scooters, ringing their bells, trying to get down, wondering what's happening. And a number of them came to me and just said, which indictment is this? Is this the Mar-a-Lago case? What's happening here? And I felt this conflict of both pride, that here we are, here's justice happening, here we are expressing free speech, people were protesting and supporting and doing what they want, all peacefully. And on the other hand, I was a little embarrassed that this is where we were. When you look forward to the presidential election, how are you feeling about the ability of our nation to actually have a safe and fair election without the threat or the reality of violence that might come along with it?
First of all, I want to say I share that dissonance that you describe, that we are attempting to make the reality true that no one is above the law in this country, not even perhaps especially a former president. And yet it is deeply embarrassing that we now have to count the impeachments and the indictments of a president. I certainly have high confidence in our election systems. As we saw in 2020, we have free and fair elections in this country. And Trump-appointed judges were the ones who actually first affirmed that. But I am deeply concerned about Republicans who are demagoguing on behalf of the former president because they are afraid of being primaried themselves. And any Republican who looks to sow doubt or discord in the body politic about the integrity of our election system, frankly, is doing what Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin could only dream of, because they have told a story to the world of a West and of the United States in decline and dysfunction. And yet we are more powerful than they. Only we can destroy ourselves, and it would start with sowing doubt about our Constitution itself.
Why do you think it is then that with each indictment, with each arraignment, the former president raises more money? His poll numbers get better. There was also a poll released last week that the number of folks who believe that President Biden was not legitimately elected has gone up. What does that tell you about where we are right now?
I can't get inside of the head of the MAGA base in the GOP primary electorate. What I will say is that elections are choices, and the choice in 2024 is going to be a stark one. President Biden inherited a democracy reeling in its worst shape since the Civil War. He inherited a pandemic. He inherited an economy in a more complicated situation than at any time since World War II. What have we seen since then? He's helped heal our democracy. COVID's in the rearview mirror, and our economy is roaring. 13 million jobs created, inflation going down, real wages going up. President Biden is going to have a strong record to run on. I'm going to help him run on that record, and I think he's going to be successful.
What's the future for investigations in Congress?
Well, the House GOP has collectively a decision to make, and unfortunately, over the last 6 months, they've consistently made the wrong one. And that decision, that fork in the road, is: do they want to be a party of governance? Do they want to try to take on the momentum of the 117th Congress, when Democrats were in charge and we passed bipartisan infrastructure investment, bipartisan manufacturing investment, bipartisan Electoral Count Act reform and gun safety legislation? Do they want to take that mantle and try to do bipartisan work? And there's a lot of bipartisan stuff we could do on lowering drug prices, by taking on PBMs, by trying to fix our broken immigration system. Or do they want to cater to Marjorie Taylor Greene and her band of zealots? Kevin McCarthy has been pretty clear thus far. It's putting us on a road to a government shutdown, and he's going to have to step up and be a statesman, not a MAGA apologist.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here at Issue. Come back and see us, because there's so much more to talk about than the former president, especially with an election year on the horizon. We really do appreciate it.
I'd like that, and have a good weekend.
Great,
Thank you so much.